Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to Dr. Master Marino's Science Fiction Experience. Today, what are we going to be looking at? We are going to be looking at fan theories that make sense, and some that really don't. So let's get ready to dive right in. Fan theory number one, the Grease Ghosts. I have a problem with this theory, but I'm going to tell you why it makes sense until it doesn't. So here's my issue. The theory is that in the movie Grease, and you're saying, wait a minute, this is a science fiction class. Why are we talking about the movie Grease? The theory is that at the very beginning of the movie, when they're talking about Summer Lovin' and, Danny rescues Sandy from drowning, the theory is that the two of them actually drowned and that they're dead and that this entire year is them trying to find each other in the afterlife, which is then represented by the fact that when they're flying away in the car at the end. That's a problem because remember, this originated as a stage show, and that doesn't really happen in the stage show. Some then try to push, that's what the whole Beauty School Dropout song is about when the guardian angel shows up, but it doesn't show up for them. So this is a theory that it sounds kind of fun at first, but the more you think about it, I think it doesn't really hold up. The Home Alone theories. Home Alone is one of these very funny movies because the movie's so thin, you can do anything you want with it. And in fact, there's a very interesting documentary right now on Netflix, the series, The Movies That Made Us, that talks about how the movie even came to be in the first place. But there are two major fan theories I want to try to dismantle here because I really don't think they're particularly good. Fan theory number one is that Kevin McAllister, because he's such a sadistic psychopath in this movie and comes up with all of these elaborate plots, eventually grows up to be Jigsaw in the Saw movies. I'm not buying it. I don't see it. It's cute. It's fun, I guess. It puts a certain twist on it, but I'm not into it. I don't think it works. The other one that works even less for me is that there are a number of people who say that the McAllister home, why it's so much nicer than everything else and why they seem to have all this money, is that Mr. McAllister is actually involved in the mob. I hate this theory, and I'll tell you why. Because if that were the case, and he were that big of a mob deal, local criminals like these two would have known exactly who he was. And in no world would they have ever dared to rob his house, especially after he showed his face there. There is no way he would have robbed that house. So I'm not buying that theory at all. I like this one. The Dark Knight theory. Now, I'm going to give you one that makes sense. I'm going to give you one that doesn't make sense. One that makes sense is that Batman, none of this is real. That this is all in his head. He's a schizophrenic. And it's why all of these crazy, psychotic characters show up, how he's able to have all of this technology and nobody's able to figure it out. The theory is that he had a schizophrenic break after his parents were killed, and he's invented all of these enemies to give himself something to do in his mind, but that he's actually a prisoner in Arkham the entire time. That's not a completely unjustified theory. The unjustified theory that doesn't make sense revolves around him, which is that in the Dark Knight series, in Christopher Nolan's trilogy, that he is actually an Iraqi war veteran. It explains the scarring on the face. He was probably captured and tortured. It would explain his knowledge of hand-to-hand combat, proficiency with explosives, planning, and why he makes that crack about, a truck full of soldiers being blown up and nobody bats an eye. That's where I have a problem with that theory. Here's my problem with it. He always is in control. He's always in command. Even in the scenes, the great scene where he introduces himself to the mob, where he's willing to blow himself up. He's always in control. Even when he pretends to be angry, that's the thing, it's an act. That seems to me him losing control, and that does not speak to the character, and that's why I don't buy it. Now, as far as the whole psychotic schizophrenic thing, that's going to lead me to my next theory, which I like. It's the great Phineas and Ferb theory. The Phineas and Ferb theory is the idea that Phineas and Ferb are not actually capable of constructing all of these ridiculous things that always seem to fall apart at the last second. Here's why that theory is actually funny, because none of what they do makes any sense. How is it they're able to construct these elaborate things? Where do they come up with the money? Nobody notices any of this, and Candace is constantly out to bust them. The theory is Candace is a schizophrenic, and all of this is actually in her head, and that she's suffering from a persecution complex, and that she can only resolve the situation by busting them, but to do so would completely unravel her world, and that's why she can never bust them. Final fan theory. This is one of my favorites. It's the force drain theory. It has a lot in there. If you watch the Star Wars series, you're going to understand that the force is there all the time, but that it's rather inconsistent in the way that it's used. Okay, so now what is that going to mean to us specifically in this case? Here's the issue for me. Sometimes they're able to use the force really well, and then they can't afterwards. The other idea is that at the end of Sith, Padme dies for no reason. The theory is that Palpatine learned from Darth Plagueis how to keep other people alive by stealing life from other people. And that the reason she's dying for no medical reason is that he's stealing the life from her to put it into him. And that's why she goes into childbirth rather prematurely at that point, because the twins are actually trying to escape from their own death. Because if they stay with her, they'll die. That is actually a very interesting theory, because then all of a sudden a lot more adds up and the whole story actually becomes better. So take a look at those theories, see what you think about them, see the questions I'm going to post in the classroom. Have a great day, everybody.